Bubba Chandler is getting the call to the big leagues on Friday, but not to start. Pirates plan to use him in long relief because what this team really needed was another reliever who throws once a week, right? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're listening to Locked On Pirates. I'm your host, Gary Morgan, and today we've got a packed show. Bubba Chandler is set to make his Major League debut, but the rule might surprise you. Johan Oviedo returns with a strong outing against the Blue Jays. Bryan Reynolds is quietly getting back on track, and we'll take a look ahead at the Pirates' 2026 rotation options and why they still haven't traded from their pitching surplus that we've all decided to tell them was the right move. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Energy for a chance. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Visit FIVEHE win.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament, and it ends October 31st, 2025. So Bubba Chandler is getting promoted tomorrow, and the Pirates plan to use him in long relief role. It's a smart way to ease a young arm into the majors, but it comes with some roster complications, okay? Like, you only get 13 pitchers. And if you stack too many long relief types or guys that you're essentially deeming piggybacks, well, they're only going once every 5 days. And then your bullpen gets thin real quick, especially if you've got 2, 3 of these. All right. So, and with Mitch Keller recently trending towards the short side on outings, team needs reliable, frequent bullpen arms, you know? Andrew Heaney is the only lefty in the pen right now. And that move where they demoted Sisk the other day kind of didn't make a lot of sense for, and I mean, it was a swap for Johan Oviedo, and you definitely had to bring him back in. I get that. But Sisk is your only other lefty besides Andrew Heaney, so it confused me a little bit. I think he's the logical candidate to lose his spot for Bubba, honestly. He has performed poorly. You can save money by not letting him get to innings things. And I mean, I don't know why I have to pretend like that's some horrible in the shadows thing here. Andrew Heaney himself recognizes that he didn't perform well enough to earn those bonuses. So I don't feel bad for him at all. The only question I have is, how, what are you going to do for a lefty? Maybe you don't care at this point. Maybe it's more about just seeing what arms can do in general as opposed to playing some matchup game. But I would imagine you'd want to, have some kind of recourse there. He provides length from the left side. I guess that's all. But don't you think soon we're going to probably see Hunter Barco do the exact same thing? It's a little bit of a delicate balance. And the Pirates are walking a little bit of a tightrope here. It's always messy, and I get the immediate inclination with the Pirates or anything going on with the Pirates is to basically assume first that they've done something really stupid, and then anything that you have to do to fix it is, collateral damage from said stupidity. I get that that's the default, and they've earned that to a large degree. But this sort of thing, this is a very difficult process to go through in the first place. And it's one that Pirates fans, frankly, don't have a lot of experience with. Pirates fans throughout the years, and this is true, if you've been here for, let's say, even 20 years, you don't have to be somebody that was here born, butted right up against the 70s, to have baseball knowledge, or especially Pittsburgh Pirates baseball knowledge. In fact, in many ways, your knowledge might be a little more relevant because you've never tasted the sweet, sweet thrill of victory. So you know how this goes more than some people, I would say. But every year, there was usually one pitcher that you kind of sort of maybe were excited for as far as making a debut, or somebody that you really thought could be a true contributor to a rotation or an actual answer, a highly touted enough prospect. We've never seen a setup like this. Say whatever you want to say about Ben Cherington, period. It's all relevant, it's all true, but you can honestly say no GM before him has created this kind of a logjam of pitching. And onboarding pitching is messy. It is messy, messy, messy. And I point to a team that the Pirates can never attain to be under this system to kind of help illustrate my point. Like if you look over at the Dodgers, okay, they've got a different problem. Most of their arms are very volatile and injury prone, and they have just had decimated rotations year after year after year. 5-6 years ago, you were staring down like the barrel at this unbelievable mass of prospects, Dustin May, and I mean, like, just name them off. Walker Buehler. A lot of them have moved on now. But for years, the Dodgers would bring those guys up, introduce them sometimes into the bullpen. Sometimes they'd have them start for a stretch of weeks and then transition to the bullpen, or sometimes they'd go back to the minors and almost look like they were being blocked, and it smells incompetent from a distance, no matter which team you're looking at, because it looks confusing, it looks messy. But what you're not seeing as a fan, or at least not thinking about as you're actively watching your team struggle to do it, is the very real innings dance going on in the background. There's so many concerns about this season. Like, and the first one is, let's get through this season. We've got to get these innings in one way or another. Come hell or high water, somebody's got to throw those innings. And then you get to protecting the health of the players. Who's been stretched out further than they ever have been? How far do you want them to go? How far are you comfortable with them going? How have they looked? Are they looking like they're dragging their dead carcass across the finish line, or do they look like they're warming to the task and ready for a little bit of a challenge and a bit of a push? You've got all those things to balance. The veteran guys probably in a situation like this don't matter as much. Like, for instance, let's say that the Pirates decided it was more valuable for them to get eyes on some of these kids than it is for them to push Mitch Keller any further. They don't need to stretch him out. He's struggling anyway. We'll just come back next year with a fresh set of eyes on him. Well, you can't do that in reality, because the biggest benefit to Mitch Keller is the innings he eats. So you'd literally be hurting his value by doing that. And if you do plan to potentially try to move him in any way, you can't do that. That doesn't mean that you want him having a whole bunch of bad innings either, right? So, I mean, like, there's a balance there as well. Everything's a dance. And when you have this many kids that you have to audition in some way, shape, or form, some of them are going to get stuck in roles that maybe aren't what they thought they were going to get. I think at some point what we'll see here is they'll float guys around. They'll let Bubba maybe piggyback for Johan Oviedo next time out, or let's say Mike Burrows. And then the next time maybe he starts and Mike Burrows piggybacks for him. Or maybe Carmen Mlodzinski piggybacks for him, or vice versa. There's so many different combinations that they can go with, but when you have guys like that and they're here and they're buttoned into, they're going to be on a starter schedule, meaning you're going to go like once every 5 days. Well, that is kind of something that just shortens your entire bullpen. If you've got 2 or 3 of those on top of a 5-man rotation, well, now you're looking at what, 8 guys already dedicated to once a week performances, once every 5 days performances. And now your bullpen has how many pieces left to pick up everywhere else? 5, right? And that gets tired real quick. Real quick. If you're on the losing end, the closer's just sitting there most times, so it's really 4. You get what I mean? It takes a while, and you can't just go, "Hey, Bubba, I know you're used to going every 5 days, but we need you today. Get out there. It's 4th. It's only 4." You're not going to do that with him. And the problem is a lot of these guys are highly touted, so you're not going to do it with any of them. So you're not going to do it to Johan. He's coming back from IL. You get what I mean? So it's going to create an awful lot of like fluctuations and everything. And I'm just preparing you for the answer isn't always, boy, Ben Cherington's an idiot. Don't get me wrong. It's the umbrella that covers the story. But some of this pitching stuff is less about being stupid and more about like, I got to find a way to do it. And all the pieces aren't necessarily going to fit. At least not as snugly as I'd like them to. But this story starts to create a story in the future. When we come back, we're going to talk about Johan Oviedo returning to the rotation and having a great outing yesterday against the Blue Jays. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, get smart categorization for your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. It helps organize, especially streaming apps. There are so many of them, and they all have different times of the month where the money comes out, and they'll increase the prices on you without notifying you necessarily, or if they do, it's in an email you ignored. Monarch really helps with all this stuff. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. I appreciate you being here, especially you everydayers, man. This team is not easy to follow, and you guys are here every day, and that is to be commended. And I really appreciate your patronage to the show. And I think it's funny how much fewer likes we have than views on the show. So let's see if we can make those numbers match up a little bit closer, huh? Let's get this up in the algorithm a little bit more. So Johan Oviedo made his second recall this season, and it's the second start since his Tommy John. He looked sharp. He gave up an initial first at-bat home run to George Springer, and it was a hell of an at-bat by George Springer, and actually not that bad of a pitch that he drilled. Like, it was a backdoor slider that kind of like hung almost on purpose because you're trying to he couldn't stop getting him to foul balls off. But after that, Oviedo was crazy. I mean, like, super good. He pitched 5 innings, allowing just 2 hits and 1 run and 1 walk while striking out 6. And it's his first major league win since September of 2023. I mean, when the game started that way with George Springer, it was like, oh man, like, but that's George Springer's 10th like that, man. He or on the 10th pitch of the season, he is, I think, has the second most leadoff home runs aside from Ricky Henderson. I think that's what I heard yesterday. So I guess this should have been expected. Pirates answered in the bottom of the first. Bryan Reynolds doubled with 2 outs. Spencer Horwitz walked, and then Tommy Pham ripped a 2-run double down the left field line. From there, it was a pitcher's duel. Chris Bassett struck out 10 over 5 and 2/3 innings for Toronto, and the early damage held. Dennis Santana closed it out perfectly in the 9th. Oviedo's performance was a reminder of what he can bring to the rotation and why he's a key piece for 2026. That future rotation, it could have Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, and Johan Oviedo as 3 locks, right? And then you're going to have those other 2 spots you could fill with Mike Burrows, Braxton Ashcraft, Carmen Majinski, Hunter Barco, Bubba Chandler, Thomas Harrington, and eventually Jared Jones. It's a deep pool. But also, it's a reminder the Pirates have had this ammo to trade for bats. And for the most part, they have it. But I think that's something that is going to come up again this offseason, where people are going to at least assume that we have that kind of depth. And I think we can make that case too. But I also think we can critically look at what that list of players and talk ourselves into a few of those being potentially very necessary bullpen options, right? I'm not 100% sure that this would even be a situation where the Pirates wouldn't be adding another veteran from the outside. I think they might. If you think about it, Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, Oviedo. Oviedo is not going to jump right back to being a 200-inning guy, okay? That is not going to happen. He's a big horse of a dude and everything, and it's not that I don't trust his physicality, but that's just not how you're going to handle a guy on his first full season back from Tommy John. So you're probably looking at a guy who's going to give you about 150 or so is where they're going to keep him. Mitch Keller, you would hope 200, and you'd hope 200 good. Paul Skeens, same thing. That's a good basis to build this on. Jared Jones, you can't count on right out of the jump. I don't care what his prognosis is. I don't care what his timeline says. I'll remind you that Johan Oviedo's was to be at the end of spring, that he was supposed to be ready to contribute, right? And then he had the lat concern. Things happen when you're rehabbing from Tommy John, and I just don't want to put that kind of pressure on Jared Jones. I don't think we should. I don't think this team or organization is in a position where they have to push him. Okay, I don't see it that way. So when I don't mention him a lot, it's not because I forget him. It's just because I don't count on him. He's a nice to have. He's a hope to have. But I'm not going to count on that. And you can't count that as part of your depth because you don't know how he's going to come back either. You don't know if when he comes back, he'll have the same velocity. We don't even know if they'll use him as a starter. We should. We should at least try it. But you don't know. Carmen Majinski, I think, we like him in the bullpen, most fans. I think the team has kind of liked him in that role, but, here they are trying him in the starting role again, too, a little bit. Braxton Ashcraft, I think, has made a case that he at least deserves a look. Boy, his last one was really nice. I'm looking forward to the next time he gets an opportunity to start a game. I don't think he was supposed to go as deep as he did in that last one, and lo and behold, he turned in one of the most efficient starts that they've gotten from any young kid. Mike Burrows, he's given up too many home runs, if you ask me. His changeup is a plus pitch. If he can build around that, I think he's an option. He too is returning from Tommy John, so this year has not been 100% of Mike Burrows either. I think you can expect an even more evolved and mature Mike Burrows next year to compete for that. In fact, I'd probably give him a head start over just about everyone else I named as far as winning one of those open 2 spots in a rotation. You obviously got Bubba Chandler. I don't think it'll be a failure if he ends up starting in AAA next year. I find it to be extremely likely. I think Hunter Barco has a good shot to win a job out of spring and pull a Jared Jones, or he could start in AAA. Thomas Harrington is injured now, didn't have a great season, but I expect a rebound from him. What he's good at, he didn't just suddenly get bad at. This is a case, I think, of a guy potentially that just has struggled with making the connection up here, at least mentally, because he doesn't look like himself up here. And maybe they never overcome that, or maybe they do. If they do, maybe they do have more depth than we think they do. But they have traded from their depth here. And some of you are still complaining about one of them. Quinn Priester was traded for Nick York. Maybe you're complaining because we haven't seen Nick York, but it's early to say we never will. And I add Quinn Priester into this mix. Let's say he's working. I mean, like, you wouldn't be touching any of these guys, right? They have used some of their pitching depth to get bats. They just haven't produced. Luis Ortiz was traded for Spencer Horwitz. I think they did get themselves an answer there. So you can move some of this depth, but I don't think that I'm going to push for it the way I did last year. If only because I think I'm starting to understand maybe why they don't trust the depth the way we trust the depth. They're not seeing these guys as whole pitchers the way we are. We're seeing Bubba Chandler as, look at where he is. He's going to be a starter next year. And then when someone goes, well, what if he struggles a little bit? You go, that's warts. Yeah, well, they won't be warts when you're actually watching them. When they're actually struggling on the mound, you'll be just as quick to say that they're not ready as you were quick to say they were this year. This is going to be a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a seesaw, a little bit of a jockeying for position, a little bit of a true fight for who becomes starters out of this group. And I would just remind that while impressive, it's also impressive how relative few of these guys are hurt. Like, this team does do a good job for the most part of keeping their arms healthy. They are getting a reputation for that. They do a lot of things wrong. I'm just telling you, don't let it turn you into one of these people that can't see anything right either. I don't know how this is going to shake out. I know I like the foundation. I like the depth of options. But I think there's a lot of youth there that's going to have to be worked through. And it's going to take a while to know who you can count on and who you can't. And you may not get the guy you think should be in that right away from the jump. And not to repeat from the first segment, but I'm going to do it anyway. It doesn't always mean they're stupid. Maybe their history, maybe their angle on things most of the time, but it doesn't always mean that. This is a messy process, and they're only going to do it so clean. Okay. When we come back, let's talk about Bryan Reynolds. He's quietly rebounding, and that's great news for this baseball team. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies and making great memories with friends, it's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. I was just golfing up at Strawberry Field up in the North Hills. I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but I notoriously lose about 20 balls every time I go there. And a friend of mine I was going with, we were going to golf together, and and I was warning him how many balls he'd lose, and he showed up with an entire pack of recycled balls. And I thought about betting how many of those balls he'd go through. And then we both had the cleanest round of our lives. It was amazing. 5-hour energy might have played a role. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-hour energy transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up for the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5FIVEHE win.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Let's talk a little bit about Bryan Reynolds. And for the first time in quite some time, let's talk rather positively about Bryan Reynolds. He is not dominating the headlines, but he is quietly getting back to form. Over his last 30 games, he's hit 3 homers with a 305 average, 354 on base percentage, and 500 slugging. His current season stats are 245 average, 304 on base percentage, 402 slug, and a 706 OPS. Not where we want them. But if he keeps up this recent clip, he'll be back in the acceptable zone soon enough. Now the Pirates just need to get Oneil Cruz to return from the concussion IL and hopefully bring some better performance with him. You're going to feel a lot better going into this offseason, if you ask me. If Bryan Reynolds and Oneil Cruz finish this season looking like they can competently at least be 2 big contributors in this lineup, I think we're starting to see the framework for what could be an okay offense. Don't get me wrong. I think the entire overriding ethos of this offense is still an issue, and it needs cleaned out and worked with and changed. We'll get into all that another day. But I like what I'm seeing from Spencer Horwitz. I like what I'm seeing from Nick Gonzalez. I like what I see from Bryan Reynolds right now. Oneil Cruz is good enough already to be in a lineup. It's just a matter of whether I think he's going to be a key contributor to the lineup or he's going to be somebody that carries the lineup. Ideally, I think this team needs him to be somebody that carries the lineup. If you really want to be honest with yourself, there's not a shot in hell they're going to go out on the free agent market and bring in someone with more potential than Oneil Cruz. I'm sorry. I know that's not exciting. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but there's no way they're going to bring in somebody that can do what that kid can do. Okay? And at some point, it's up to them to help him get to the point where he does what he can do. When he comes back from the IL, the concussion IL, and as far as I understand, they are planning on working with him on his swing a little bit too before they bring him off of this concussion IL. I'm hoping that he brings some better performance with him. I really am. I'm hoping that those two can finish strong, paired with Gonzalez and Horwitz. And then, yeah, there's other guys too. Okay, like I know they're giving a lot of time to Jack Sawinski right now, and that's frustrating to some of you, and I get it. But Leo Piguero is in that same boat. The Jared Triolo they keep going with, and Jared Triolo has actually truly hit better. The problem is, like, Jared Triolo is at best, if you ask me, he tops out at Jordy Mercer. And as fans, I don't think we can afford to turn our nose up at Jordy Mercer right now. He may not be where you want to land, but if you can fill your team with Jordy Mercers as your baseline and then move on from them and replace them with, a Neil Walker or a Starling Marte or here and there as they develop, that seems like a much better way to go than to go, well, you're not going to be a superstar, so see you later. We'll take a shot at the next guy. I think sometimes you have to admit to yourself, to develop somebody who can be like even just a slightly above average Major League Baseball player, it can take 2 or 3 years of Major League Baseball time and effort to get that. And at some point, you have to achieve that baseline. So I don't necessarily think it's always a waste of time to go back and play guys that you think just their ceiling is limited. And I'll agree with you. But when they get pushed out of the way, it's easier to push them out of the way. Jay Hay is a perfect example. Josh Harrison was a guy whose ceiling was supposed to be just a utility player. There wasn't supposed to be anything special there. And he ended up playing himself into a valuable player. He learned how to hit. He didn't hit that way when he first got here. Like I thought Josh Harrison like developed into a decent player and somebody that you actually wanted to have on this baseball team. I'm not telling you that's where Jared Triolo's headed, but I'm saying I couldn't have told you that that's where Josh Harrison was headed either until he had done it for 3 years, 4 years, It takes time in the majors to develop even into just slightly above average players, let alone stars. Nick Gonzalez is one of those guys that I don't think you've seen him reach a ceiling yet. But I think we've already gone through 2 years ago, guys were saying that he was probably a bust. He was never going to get here and contribute. Some people had pushed him out of the plans entirely for Termarr Johnson. And it sounds awful familiar with what I hear going on right now with Connor Griffin, who excites me quite a bit. But I'm already hearing well, nobody else in the system that's going to do this should even bother because Connor Griffin's coming. Okay, well, Connor Griffin's coming, right? Much like the dragons in Game of Thrones, eventually they'll be there. But you got to watch an awful lot before you get to the point where Dracarys does anything. All right? I'm just saying that there's an awful lot of baseball to be played, and there's no way to know the answer to some questions short of watching the baseball be played by whoever it may be. I have differences of opinion with what this team does as far as who they call up and who they try and when they do it. But for the most part, this process shouldn't be surprising people the way it seems to be. Okay, this is how you do it. This is how you check off boxes, eliminate waste. This is the sifting process. And while I don't think they come to the right conclusions here, I'm not going to question the actual process of shaking the box and hoping to find flakes. Okay? That's all I got for today. Bubba's debut is coming. Johan's return is encouraging, and Reynolds is quietly climbing back. The Pirates are juggling arms and trying to find balance, but the decisions they make now could shape the next few seasons. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan, and I'll catch you next time with an all-new one tomorrow.